Jaya Radha Govinda, Radha Govinda Jaya Radha Govinda, Radha Govinda Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunnavadi Paschatta Deshatarine Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai.
Thank you, Bhakti True Swami, for that wonderful kirtan. Good evening and welcome to all of you this evening. Hare Krishna. Special welcome to our local GBC representative, His Holiness Romapad Swami, who is joining us this evening. My name is Sesha Das, and I'm the chairman of the GBC Brooklyn Temple Sales Committee. And tonight I'll be your moderator for this informational town hall meeting. Our committee members are on the stage this evening, His Holiness Bhakti Charu Swami Maharaj, who is this year's International Chairman of the Governing Body Commission. His Grace Pragosh Prabhu, who came all the way from Ireland just for this meeting. He was the 2005 GBC Chairman, and he's a member of our GBC Brooklyn Temple Sales Committee. And Guru Garanga Das, who is our co-counsel that's been helping with the GBC's efforts in regard to the sale of the Brooklyn Temple. There are three basic reasons why we're having this meeting this evening. And it's sort of an istagosti. We're more familiar with that term, istagosti, than maybe town hall meeting. But the same purpose is there, istagosti. So the three main reasons why we've asked you to come here this evening, and we're grateful that you did, are to state precisely what the GBC body decided at its most recent annual general meeting about the sale of the Brooklyn Temple, to explain why the GBC body decided as it did, and to describe how the GBC body intends to implement its decision. The GBC body has already made its decision, and you'll find it in the packet of materials we handed out to you. Did everyone get a packet of materials? Also in the packet of materials is a program that we'll be following this evening, and we'll be discussing these three reasons from different perspectives. The program will also include a question and answer period for those of you that have questions about the presentation this evening. Also joining us this evening is Siddhanta Prabhu, who came from Los Angeles. You know Siddhanta, he's published the well-known Memories of Srila Prabhupada video series. He's here filming these proceedings for Iskcon-wide educational and informational purposes. And finally, before we begin the program this evening, I'd like to remind everyone of some very useful advice that His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada would often recite when Iskcon faced challenges in its method of going forward. He advises disciples to, quote, proceed with a cool head. I just love that expression, proceed with a cool head. What does it mean? It means to be prepared to hear with open minds and open hearts, giving respect to all those who are present with us this evening. And even if they're not present, they should still be given respect. So with that, I'd like to introduce His Holiness Bhakti True Swami again.
We all have gathered here today to address the issue of the cell of Brooklyn Temple. As you know, Srila Prabhupada wanted us to work together, and therefore he created the concept of collective management through a governing body, the GBC, and appointed it as the ultimate managing authority of Iskcon. As a result, the GBC body also acts as the executor of Srila Prabhupada's will and the protector of his Iskcon. When we act with Srila Prabhupada's mission and purpose enshrined in our hearts, everything becomes perfectly harmonious. However, the trouble begins when we fail to do that. Whenever we undertake something, especially when it is a difficult task, let us meditate on Srila Prabhupada and consider what he would want us to do. In order to hear his voice, we do not have to imagine anything. His instructions are clearly documented in his books, letters, lectures, and various other testaments and his last will. We simply have to follow his instructions and do so collectively under the guidance of the GBC body. Proper communication is very important. Otherwise, we run the risk of developing misunderstanding. We are so few of us who recognize the importance of this Krishna consciousness movement. Therefore, let us all become united at the lotus feet of Srila Prabhupada and distribute his mercy from wherever we are situated. Ours is a society of servants. Therefore, the leaders of Iskcon have a solemn responsibility to serve Srila Prabhupada's loyal followers faithfully and never mislead them.
At this stage, I'd like to invite His Grace Pragosh Prabhu to come and address us about the statement of the committee's purpose. Pragosh?
Thank you very much, Shesha for that introduction. And good evening, ladies and gentlemen, Vaishnavas and Vaishnavis. It's an honor to be here this evening, having flown in from Dublin. I guess that speaks for itself. Now to the main discussion point of the evening. Why has Iskcon's governing body commission decided to oppose the sale of the Iskcon Brooklyn Temple? As you know, we used to have another temple here in New York, an 11-story, which of course isn't unusual for New York, it's a little unusual for where I come from, an 11-story building in the heart of Manhattan on West 55th Street. And though many of you, or some of you at least, are too young to remember that, I certainly am, it was a building that Srila Prabhupada was exceedingly proud of. He, by all accounts, loved that building. Selling that temple actually turned out to be one of the greatest blunders in the history of our movement. And as the saying goes, those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it. It was Srila Prabhupada's firm principle that temples are not to be sold, particularly when the deity has been invited to reside there. This was so important to Srila Prabhupada that he made it one of the few topics in his last will. In India, that will instructs that no temples are to be sold, ever to be sold, but outside India too. And even though he did concede that a temple could be sold if the need arose, he ordered that in principle temples should never be sold. The Brooklyn Temple building, it may be in dire need of renovation, but so are many other Iskcon temples. And the GBC has concluded that the need for renovation does not constitute a reason for selling a temple. And also, we don't sell temple because we don't have enough parking spaces. Actually, I think they have that problem here in the Brooklyn Library, but as far as I know, they're not selling it. Oh. Our New York temple stands in Brooklyn today because of the hard work of hundreds of devotees, 2 or 3 generations of them, including the current management. And the GBC wants to make sure that what they've all worked for, that it isn't lost, and rather it's used to its full potential. The work involved in the proposed relocation would need more men than we can hope to have. It would need more than all of you assembled here this evening. And it would cost more money than the sale would likely bring in. But most of all, it would distract us from our real business for only Krishna knows how long. Never in Iskcon's history have we built a temple on time and within budget. Selling and trying to relocate this long-established temple could once again take Iskcon's preaching and its community outreach in New York City and set it back for many years. Meanwhile, all around us, I've been venturing around Brooklyn today, and all around, Brooklyn's booming. Cranes everywhere, buildings going up everywhere, it's really booming. It's as though Krishna himself, in his own neighborhood, has miraculously transformed it. And as a result, our existing location is now one to be treasured and protected. When the GBC body, 20 long years ago, first gave permission for the temple to be sold, moving out of such a dynamic, flourishing neighborhood, it was not at all what the GBC had in mind at that time. And in 2015, when a contract was being negotiated and signed, the GBC didn't even find out about that until 8 months later, after it was already a done deal. Whether not informing the GBC was deliberate or simply a lapse, the good governance that Srila Prabhupada wanted of us demands more. It demands that the sale of a temple, what to speak of the sale of a temple worth nearly $60 million, and then particularly on top of that, the sale of a temple worth $60 million in the most important city in the world. That really demands good governance. And it demands that beforehand a broad and thorough and open review with the local congregation and the GBC body being fully informed and involved. That's not what happened, and that's another reason why the GBC stands against the sale. A sale and move on such a grand level calls for a plan worked out in careful, painstaking detail and thoroughly critiqued and reviewed both by professionals and the devotee community. To forge ahead without openly sharing such a plan with the New York local congregation is to once again potentially invite disaster. So as far as we know, such a plan does not exist. Above all, as things stand now, if the sale goes through, we simply don't know where Shri Radha Govinda and their devotees would go. Within a few months, we'd have to give the buyer an empty building, and where to go then would be our problem. We know that constructing a new temple would take years, and meanwhile, Shri Radha Govinda and their congregation would have to be shifted to some interim place. And do we know precisely where that interim place would be? No, we don't. And do we know the precise location for the proposed new temple? No, we don't know that either. We were first told that the new location would be somewhere in Queens. More recently, the temple leaders have assured us that they are committed to moving somewhere else in Brooklyn. Yes, Brooklyn. But we already have a temple in Brooklyn. All we have to do is stay here, reap its advantages, work with its challenges, and move forward. Looking out from the roof of the 55th Street Temple, Srila Prabhupada said we could open temples throughout New York City. He said East Side, West Side, all around the town. We were once in an ideal location in Manhattan. Now, we're in an ideal location in Brooklyn. And the GBC body have not seen a persuasive case for risking all of that and relocating again. So the full GBC body has thus voted 3 times, twice in 2016 and once again this year in 2017, that we should do all we can to stop this sale from going through. For the GBC, the question of whether to sell or not to sell is no longer on the table. That question has already been decided. This sale, the body has resolved, should be stopped. And the task given to our committee is to do all we safely can to stop the sale. Thus, we humbly call upon you, the devotees of Shri Shri Radha Govinda, to give us your support and to give us your blessings for implementing the will of the GBC body. Thank you all very much. Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Thank you, Prakash Prabhu. Next this evening, we have a video presentation by David Samuels, who is a well-known legal expert on religious and nonprofit organizations in the state of New York. Mr. Samuels is a former deputy chief at the New York State Office of the Attorney General and a former chair of the Nonprofit Organizations Committee of the New York City Bar Association. Mr. Samuels was named New York City's Nonprofit Lawyer of the Year in 2016.
Good evening, everyone, and Hare Krishna. My name is David Samuels. I am an attorney at Duval & Stackenfeld, a Manhattan law firm which represents Iskcon's Governing Body Commission, or GBC, in the matter of the sale of your temple, the Radha Govinda Mandir, also known as Iskcon Brooklyn or Bharati Center. My area of expertise is nonprofit and religious corporations law, including real estate sales of churches and temples such as Bharati Center. I also served for almost a decade as the Deputy Chief of the Charities Bureau of the Office of the New York Attorney General, the very agency which will play a vital role in deciding whether your temple may or may not be sold. Before beginning, I would like to thank Shesha Prabhu, the chairman of your GBC Brooklyn Temple Sale Committee, and Guru Garanga Prabhu, legal counsel to the committee, for inviting me to address you. The committee has asked me to explain some of the basic legal issues and concerns raised by the sale of the Brooklyn Temple property by Iskcon's affiliate, the Bharati Center. The law in New York State includes special provisions and requirements to protect religious organizations and their congregants from property sales that may not be in their best interest. That is why the New York Attorney General and/or New York courts are called upon to grant or deny approval of any sale of a building such as your Brooklyn Temple. Under New York state law, there is a two-pronged test dating back many decades by which the sale of a building by a religious society is judged. First, is the agreed purchase price fair and reasonable? Second, does the sale transaction promote the purposes of the religious corporation and serve the interests of its members? In this connection, the Appellate Division of the New York State Supreme Court has held that, quote, in applying the second prong of the test, the court should be guided primarily by whether those ends would be realized in light of the conditions prevailing at the time the issue is presented to the court. That's from a case called Church of God versus Fourth Church from the Appellate Division, 2nd Department from 1980. The GBC Brooklyn Sale Committee is not questioning the sale price, but does have legitimate concerns as to whether the proposed sale truly serves the purposes and interests of the Bharati Center and its members then and today. As the governed ecclesiastical body of Bharati Center, the GBC has every right to raise these concerns in a manner consistent with the law. The GBC's main concerns are: A, if Bharati Center petition to sell is approved, it will constitute a violation of the instruction of Srila Prabhupada, Iskcon's founder, Acharya, not to sell Iskcon temples. See Srila Prabhupada's last will and testament dated June 1977. Absent a genuine need, Iskcon properties outside of India should in principle never be sold. As Srila Prabhupada directed in another document in June 1974, he himself is, quote, the supreme authority in all matters of the society, end quote. And the same principle still stands today. Bharati Center's own bylaws state, quote, the corporation shall recognize His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada's last will and teachings as the supreme authority in all matters and governing body commission, GBC, as his authorized agents or executors in accordance with the certificate of incorporation, end quote. Therefore, the sale of the Brooklyn Temple in violation of Srila Prabhupada's will could not possibly be in the best interests of either Bharati Center, an Iskcon affiliate, or its congregation. Rather, it would be a violation of Bharati Center's own bylaws and an affront to Iskcon's founder, Acharya, its ultimate spiritual guide. If Bharati Center's petition to sell is approved, the Bharati Center will have no proper alternative place for the worship of the Archa Vigraha, or sacred form of the deity of Krishna, for an indeterminate time. If Bharati Center's petition to sell is approved, there will be no adequate place of assembly for the congregation for an indeterminate time. The purposes of Bharati Center, as explained in its bylaws, require it to, quote, perpetually and regularly maintain and expand the service of the deity, end quote. In the view of the GBC, this purpose would be frustrated if the proposed sale were approved and the congregants lost their place of worship. Also, Bharati Center bylaws clearly state that Bharati Center is not allowed to conduct itself in any way contrary to the ecclesiastical policies established by the GBC. That is from the bylaws, Article 3, Section 2. The governing body commission disapproves the sale and properly asserts its view that the sale be denied approval by the New York Attorney General or the courts due to the concerns which I have explained. It has been suggested that the Iskcon Governing Body Commission approved the proposed sale in two GBC resolutions adopted nearly 20 and 10 years ago, respectively. Now, as a legal matter, such antiquated resolutions cannot be relied upon due to intervening changed circumstances and are therefore inapplicable. Furthermore, such obsolete resolutions do not and did not apply to the present proposed sale. We have also explained to the Office of the Attorney General that supervening resolutions of the GBC make clear that it disapproves the proposed sale. Now, there might be concern that if the proposed sale is rejected by the Attorney General or the court, then Bharati Center will have somehow breached or violated its sales contract. However, under the New York Religious Corporations Law, the sales contract is not enforceable if it has not been approved by the Attorney General or the court. Also, a seller may change its mind and petition the court to disapprove the sale contract if it does not promote the seller's purposes or the interest of the seller's members. Therefore, we are secure in our view that the buyer will not be entitled to any penalties or damages if the contract is disapproved. This is consistent with the GBC's decision, quote, to stop the sale of the Iskcon Brooklyn Temple property unless selling is the only way to avoid severe legal or financial penalties arising from a failure to perform the contract of sale, end quote. If you have any questions about the subject matter covered this evening, please address yourselves to my able colleague and co-counsel, Guru Gauranga Prabhu. He is a Yale and University of Chicago law graduate admitted to the New York bar since 1991. He has been corporate finance attorney in one of Manhattan's finest law firms and general counsel of a Fortune 500 corporation. He is also Srila Prabhupada's initiated disciple since 1971. I again thank you for giving me the opportunity to explain the most salient legal issues arising from the proposed sale of your Brooklyn Temple property. Hare Krishna.
As may be expected in programs like this, we're running a little late, and we do have limits on the time available to us in the auditorium this evening. But I wanted to take a few minutes to explain to you how the GBC came to its decision, so you can get a look at the workings of the GBC and hopefully understand that this has not been a rushed or prejudiced or political process that the GBC has followed, but rather one which is measured and deliberate. Again, in my introduction, I mentioned three principal purposes for the meeting this evening: to state precisely what the GBC body has decided, to explain why the GBC decided as it did, and to describe how the GBC body plans to implement its decision. The GBC reached its conclusions to oppose the temple sale through an intense process of information gathering, careful thought, and measured deliberation. This included fact-finding, dialogue, meetings with Ramapad Swami representing the Bharati board, meetings with Jai Dwaita Swami representing congregational members opposed to the sale, and with other interested parties. The GBC has also extensively consulted expert legal counsel. In early January 2016, the GBC body first learned that the Iskcon Brooklyn Temple property was under contract for sale. As the GBC meeting was just around the corner at that time, the GBC Executive Committee, which consisted of myself, Bhakti True Swami, and Pragosh Prabhu, asked Ramabhadra Prabhu, the Brooklyn Temple president, to travel to Mayapur to make a presentation on the Bharati Center's plans for sale and relocation of Sri Sri Radha Govinda. The GBC body also, at that meeting, carefully weighed input from His Holiness Ramapad Swami, speaking as the local GBC zonal secretary for Brooklyn in support of the sale and the proposed relocation of the deities. Also at that GBC meeting, in another session, the GBC body heard arguments made by Rameshwar Prabhu with the support of Jai Dwaita Swami against the sale and the proposed relocation of the deities. While their arguments were complicated and long, I don't want to get into that this evening, but just let me simply say that ample time was given to both sides of the issue presented to the GBC to argue for and against the sale. Subsequently, the GBC body held its own question and answer period with each of those parties, and finally the GBC body discussed among themselves. Only after such a process was a vote taken on whether or not to oppose the sale. The vote was taken, and the decision was decidedly on the side to oppose the sale. Shortly thereafter, the executive committee began to enlist the services of legal counsel. Guru Garanga Prabhu became our in-house legal counsel, and we engaged the Alcott Law Group of Manhattan as outside counsel, specifically to better understand the underlying legal issues. I think it's important to understand the magnitude of a $60 million transaction. I think that to do that transaction, or to question it on the GBC's part without delving into the underlying legal matters, would be irresponsible on our part. Lawyers had to be and were engaged by the GBC Executive Committee to try to understand what actually are we dealing with here. Next, we had a face-to-face meeting in New York at which Rompad Swami was there and their lawyer, and our lawyers were present. That was on June 8th, 2016. The purpose of that meeting was to actually get access to the sales contract so we can understand the underlying legal issues. Particularly of concern to the committee and the GBC body itself was the claim that if the contract was not executed, if the temple did not proceed with the sale as the contract said, the Bharati Center could be subject to massive legal and financial penalties. So we wanted to know exactly what that meant and whether or not there were ways to avoid that. Again, in July 2016, myself and Guru Garanga traveled to New York for a meeting with Bharati Center representatives and their attorneys. And this time we had Jayadvaita Swami and Rameshwar Prabhu come to that meeting along with their lawyer. We wanted to bring all the parties together at one table so that we could all explore this particular idea of massive monetary damages in a potential lawsuit. But we also learned at that meeting of what the Attorney General's office may be quoted as saying, is that there was an unprecedented number of objections from the congregation to this proposed sale. After all our information gathering attempts, we finally asked a formal legal opinion from our attorneys, and we presented that legal opinion to the GBC body at the midterm meeting in Mumbai in October 2016. Again, the GBC body had a substantial discussion of the matter, going over the issues very carefully, and at the end of it, the GBC body reconfirmed its opposition to the sale and expressed support for the Executive Committee's legal plan. In December 2016, it became clear to the GBC Executive Committee that the Bharati Center would or could at any moment be presenting their revised petition for approval of the sale to the Office of the Attorney General. To risk the sale being approved without the GBC entering into the legal arena, which was our main focus in trying to oppose the sale, was too great, and therefore the GBC Executive Committee, on behalf of the Governing Body Commission, submitted a letter to the Attorney General's office identifying the Governing Body Commission as the ultimate managing authority for Iskcon and stating that we intended to oppose the sale. In January 2017, I invited the board members of the Bharati Center to meet in New York to discuss what our committee had concluded and why we had concluded thus. That meeting didn't take place for varying reasons, but there was a precondition that no attorneys should attend that meeting. The GBC's whole involvement in this, and it's coming to its conclusion, involved attorneys. And so to have a meeting without attorneys didn't seem to be in the best interest of the GBC. And additionally, some of the members of the board couldn't confirm that they'd actually be able to attend, so that meeting didn't take place. And finally, at the annual general meeting of the GBC in February 2017, the GBC considered this matter for a third time and came to the conclusion that's in the resolution we passed out to you tonight, Resolution 314 of the GBC, restating its opposition to the sale. So those is a brief historical narrative of why and how the GBC operates. I think it's a good statement of responsible governance that Pragosh Prabhu was alluding to in his remarks. At this stage, we want to take questions that you may have this evening. But before we do that, let me just explain a few ground rules about taking questions. We ask that you collect your thoughts before you come to the microphone over here, and we'll ask everyone to come to the microphone. But collect your thoughts before you come to the microphone, because we'd like you to ask your question succinctly. That will save enough time for many questions and give everyone a chance to address the committee. So if you'd like to write your question, Lakshmana Shringa has cards over here that he can pass out to you. You can write it, and if we can't get to it tonight, at least it'll be submitted to the committee. But be succinct in your questions. Also, no speech making, please. If you come up, ask your question, don't try to give a speech. Stay on topic of the purpose of this meeting, and remember the three purposes only. Those are the only questions we'll entertain here this evening. And okay, I think that's it. Any other ground rules for questions? Maharaj.
Hare Krishna, my name is Chandrasekhar Swami. My question is simple. The actual Brooklyn Temple is indeed in a good location. I agree with that. It's a very expensive location. So what will we do about a local congregation? That's the issue I see. I know that the GBC has come to this decision. I personally disagree with it to a certain degree, but I accept whatever the GBC says. However, my question before the GBC is that we're going to throw away this option, and it's not going to be for a short time, it's going to be for a long time, that we will have a local congregation that can live and serve the deities. The Borum Hill area is a very expensive area. It's high urban area. How many devotees live in a high urban area? How many devotees want to live in an expensive area like that? I think we'll find there's not many. If we decide to go that way, I just want people to know that they've made that decision, that we are going to live with that shackle.
Okay, thank you for your question, Maharaj. Thank you. Pragosh Prabhu, do you like to handle that question?
As far as an answer goes, that no matter what you do in life, there are always positives and not so positives. And it's a question of weighing all of those things up. That has been done, been weighed up, and the conclusion is all but unanimous. I say all but unanimous because there may have been one that didn't vote in favor, but but unanimous, the vote is that we should not sell this temple, with the only condition being if there's serious financial penalties. I come from a part of the world where we also have that same problem, both in central London, in Soho Street, and also even worse, it's even a bigger problem 12 miles up the road in Bhaktivedanta Manor, because it's in a green belt like that. But actually, both of those temples are flourishing temples, even with that difficulty that you raise. So, you know, there's pros and cons, but actually, the decision is overwhelming that this is a good location, we should stay here, and then maybe devotees will actually be able to either commute or rise to that challenge of trying to purchase here, as they've done, both in Bhaktivedanta Manor and also central London.
Okay.
Hare Krishna. Rameswar Das, your humble servant. If I may make a presumption, a hypothetical, if the sale does not go through, if it doesn't go through, would this executive committee be willing to continue their involvement in helping to create a plan for going forward at this location?
This committee serves at the order of the GBC body. I tried to explain in my remarks how the GBC body dealt with this situation. It was a consultative process, not just the members are here alone making decisions. And so if the GBC wills that we continue, we see ourselves as servants of the GBC body, and we'll try to execute what they ask us to do.
My name is Madhu Mangal Das. First question is directed at Pragosh. It was made public that at one point you were an overseer of a committee that actually agreed with the sale of the temple. And now you're here as an opposition to the sale. Secondly, how can a managing body, there was an issue presented where if things are working contrary to the bylaws of the GBC, how is it there are devotees here, numerous devotees have been physically threatened with arrest, with removal, simply for being opposed to the sale of the temple? Why is it that this meeting should be taking place in a library when we're all devotees and this meeting can't take place in the temple itself? It doesn't seem just.
Okay, thank you for your question. Pragosh Prabhu, you want to?
The GBC did initially agree to the sale of the Brooklyn Temple. I think that on mature reflection, when there was more information available for the GBC, and that was Krishna's arrangement also, and we have to see that Krishna's hand in all of these things, that it did take time from when that original decision was made, and we're still here. The temple still isn't sold. So as time passed and as the GBC became more aware of the specific situation, and as I spoke when I was at the podium, that you know, Brooklyn is booming. It seems like, you know, Krishna has decided, you know, he wants to stay, and therefore he's renovating the whole neighborhood in order that we do stay. So I think it's just a case of, on mature reflection, the GBC has decided that actually whatever was decided 20 years ago wasn't the correct decision, and therefore they've changed their mind, basically.
Just about your question about devotees being mistreated. Again, that subject is a sensitive one to any Vaishnava. Doesn't want to see anyone treated poorly, and so the GBC does want to acknowledge hearing your statements in that regard and the experiences that devotees may have had. We do have methods within Iskcon established to deal with these things. Iskcon Resolve handles disputes amongst devotees to try to resolve them in a Vaishnava way. So we advise that those alternatives be sought when there is mistreatment. Lakshmi Nrsimha.
Yes, I have a question from the audience written down, and it says, what is the independent legal opinion on whether opposing the sale will cause financial loss?
Guru Granga, do you want to answer that?
What the New York state law gives to religious organizations is something unique that it doesn't give to any other kind of organization. If a company signs a sale agreement and the contract is properly executed, there's no going back without a breach of contract lawsuit or some willful misrepresentation lawsuit. But that doesn't apply to religious organizations in the state of New York. This two-pronged test exists in this form for some decades, but it exists embodied in the law for 2 centuries. And what that is that the state takes a paternalistic approach to the protection of religious organizations that it doesn't take to any other entities, because there have been abuses and there have been unfortunate outcomes that the state did not consider was in the interest of the public policy of the state. In fact, in one case, which I just will share very briefly, New York state law puts religious organizations in the same category as the incompetent, the infants, and the weak of mind. So we would be foolish to not take advantage of the benefit that New York law confers specifically to us, and to behave as if we were not a religious organization in the defense of our temple. And one last point, there are case law in New York where a religious corporation petitioned for approval of the sale, reconsidered because the congregation immediately became revitalized against the sale, and came back with another petition to disapprove the very petition that it asked to be approved. That all takes place under religious corporations law in the state of New York.
Next questioner, please.
Hare Krishna. Let me introduce myself. This is Arjuna Das. I'm originally from Mayapur. I am here in this New York temple since 1991, April 1st. And so when I came first to this country, I used to see both of these present Prasadam Hall and the so-called name as Bingo Hall used to be full of congregation member, and so many devotees used to be there. At present, there is one hall not even full, and congregation members stopped coming to the temple. I will request to GBC to reach to the congregation member what is the reason why they are not coming to the temple, and why every day losing our congregation member. So what is the necessary to have a big temple when we don't have enough full of devotees of this temple?
Bhakti True Swami, would you like to?
Well, actually, we are not in a position right now to decide, what is the reason of why the congregations are not coming and so forth. We have assigned it by the GBC body to just deal with this Brooklyn Temple cell issue. So at this point, we don't want to get into that.
Lochanananda Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. I wanted to mention that Guru Garanga Prabhu was the legal counsel, and I, in 1971, went together to Geneva, Switzerland, to open the first temple there. And it was very difficult, actually. Thank you. We had a difficult time. There were many obstacles. The government declared us undesirable. And Guru Garanga Prabhu took it upon himself to travel to Grenoble to see if there was a good field there for preaching. And there was. I wrote to Srila Prabhupada about this, and I said, perhaps we should move the temple in Geneva to Grenoble. And Prabhupada said, do not close one temple to open another. That's right.
We have time for one last question.
How will the GBC enforce this resolution? I guess they're referring to the resolution in the packet here in New York City. The Bharati Center is determined to go through with the sale at all costs. So I guess the question is, how will that...
Guru Garanga?
Well, we hope that Bharati Center will reconsider in light of the information, legal and otherwise, that we've shared today. And of course, we can also meet again and talk more about it. If, however, Bharati Center persists with the petition to sale the temple, then the next step will be what the New York State Office of the Attorney General will say about that. Because the AG will, Attorney General's office, the AG will make some form of recommendation or not at its discretion for Kings County Supreme Court, because the whole thing will move to the court. It won't be exactly plaintiff versus defendant. It will be what they call a special proceeding, and it will be up to a judge of the New York State Supreme Court to decide whether to approve or deny the petition to sell. And what the Attorney General says will be a very significant factor.
Okay, I'm going to do one question. I'm going to ask this lady to ask your question, because, yeah, please. We have to, last I'm sorry.
Thank you so much. My name's Hare Priya. I'm currently banned from Radha Govinda Mandir's darshan by Ramabhadra, but my question is very specific about the vote. We've been told that there may be a chance that there's a vote of the community, and perhaps Ramabhadra will never take that path out of risk that he would lose the vote. However, if there is a vote, I know that the great majority see that I'm banned. I've been banned for a year. Ramapad Swami supported this ban. I've emailed him several times. So the question is, how will you protect the community if there is a vote to ensure that they should show up and vote no to help stop the sale, and they won't be banned for it or they won't be ostracized for it?
Well, that reminds me, today one devotee came from Baltimore just to see me. And he thought that I was staying in the Radha Govinda temple. So he went to the temple, and he was told that I was not staying there. Anyway. So, and then later on, he went back there, asking the management if he could stay there that night. And he was flatly refused. And not only that, it was told that the door should be closed on his face. And it's very, very unfortunate to see that these kind of things are happening. Devotees are being banned from the temple. Did Srila Prabhupada establish Iskcon all over the world just for that? It's very, very unfortunate. And I can assure you that we are going to take it up in Iskcon, GBC, and we are going to do something about it. This statement of mine is not as a member of this committee, but as the chairman of the GBC body. So let's just follow Srila Prabhupada's lotus feet, and let us continue to fulfill his desire by spreading Krishna consciousness all over the world. Thank you all very much.
Tadaya karuna ghana ghanatyam